So it's no secret at this point that the brand new TMNT movie is going to be really good and may even be the best Ninja Turtle movie of all time. But with that being said, over the past few, I want to say months, maybe even weeks, I have had a few concerns about this movie that has all put me on the fence of whether or not this movie will be actually good or not. Now, before we do go into this video further, I do want to make this point really clear, and that is the fact that I'm still looking forward to this movie, and I think this will possibly be one of the best Ninja Turtle movies ever, and even on the day that I'm going to watch this movie, I'm still going to think that it's probably going to be the best one that I've seen, and yeah, I know that I'm going to love it no matter what, but I just had these concerns that are still putting me on the edge, and yeah. Okay, so for the first concern that I have for this movie, it is the voices. Now I must say that overall, I do think that the majority of the voices that I've chosen for this cast is really good and really great, and I do think that the majority of them do really work for the characters. I would definitely say that the two standout ones for me so far is Leonardo and April O'Neil. I really do like their voices which are chosen for the characters, and I definitely have to say that they really suit the characters really well, and I can't wait to hear a lot more of them. But with that being said, I do think there are a few voices in this movie that do really make me question a lot about this movie in terms of the characters and their voices. And I do think the two main standout ones for me so far is Donatello and Splinter. I would definitely have to say that these two voices are not ones which I would have chosen for the characters, and I don't think they really sound too well for the characters. I think that Donnie sounds a bit too young, and I do think that his voice would have been better for Mikey, but I do think that if they are making Donnie the youngest in this version, then I do think that it's understandable and really good, but I would like a bit more clarification or whether or not he is the youngest or not. So, at the moment, I'm a bit 50-50 on his voice because I don't know if he's the youngest or not, but I will say that. But I do think that Donnie is okay for most of the time, but sometimes he just sounds way too young for my liking. And I would say that maybe Mikey and Donnie's voice should be swapped around, but I do think that Donnie's voice is going to be one that I have to get used to be able to say, yeah, he's a good voice, but so far, not really liking it all too much. And then there's Splinter's voice, and I'll say that my problem with it so far is the fact that it just sounds so dull and not really like a Splinter voice that you'd expect to hear. Now when I'm thinking of Splinter voices, I'm sort of thinking back to 2003 Splinter, 2012 Splinter, Rise Splinter, where they have like a kind of voice that you would listen to whatever they said. But with this Splinter, I don't really know what to really say about his voice. He doesn't really sound like a Splinter, but he basically wants to like sit around and listen to whatever he has to say. He just sounds like so emotionless, and he doesn't really like give any sort of emotions in his voice when he's talking to the turtles. And I would have to say that if I was watching the movie a lot more, I would be able to get a better understanding of his voice and maybe even like it. But I'd say that with what we've heard so far, I'm not exactly liking it too much, but I think I need to hear a little bit more to be like, yeah, this is a good Splinter. Okay, so the next thing which I have a concern about is the art style. Now, I must admit, the animation for this movie looks really good, amazing, incredible, maybe even, competing for the best animated movie of the year, maybe. And I do think it has a lot of competition when comparing it to, Spider-Verse and some other movies. So this movie has a lot going for the animation. But in terms of the art style, I'll say it's a little bit of a different story. Now, I would have to say that the art style of this one is a little bit hard to really explain because even though it's CGI, it doesn't really look like CGI, and it looks more like clay animation, which just looks beautiful for this movie. But in that being said, I do think that this movie, in terms of the art style, is definitely hindering a lot of the character designs for certain characters. And a great example would be Mikey with his head basically constantly changing different shapes in different frames, which I must admit, it just looks really weird and really inconsistent with all the other shots where you do see Mikey with a watermelon sized head than a normal shaped head. And I do think that maybe this might be something which I'll have to get used to throughout watching this movie, but I would have to say that so far, I'm not really liking the inconsistency with Mikey's head. And then another thing for the art style which sort of has me on the fence so far is also Rocksteady, and also how this animation might not fit every other form of product placement in a way, just because even though the designs work really well for CGI animation here in the movie, I don't think it really translates too well in terms of other products they're trying to sell for kids and adults and stuff like that. And this is a really clear example when we do look at the Rocksteady figure, where even though the figure is really short, I think it's even smaller than the Turtles, which is really disappointing, his design doesn't really work too well in figure form. Now, I'm somewhat curious to see with the other figures that they will be releasing, because, you know, they're going to release more than one wave for this movie. And I must admit, I'm really curious to see how the other characters will be translated into figure form, because so far, I do think that ones that have done so far are really good and do work really well for the animation style, but I do think that Rocksteady is like a clear example of that maybe the animation style maybe doesn't really work too well in terms of translating it to other forms of media. So I'm somewhat curious to see how other figures could be translated, as well as like how other products are going to be making them. I mean, even if you do look at the plush teddy bears they'll be making, Bebop looks like Peppa Pig. That's the best way to describe him, and I can't tell if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's there. And again, I think that just comes down to more the thing of just like, I don't really know how well this is going to translate into other products. But I must admit, overall, the art style is okay, except for like a few characters here and there, but I'm just curious to see how well it's going to translate to other products. Now, my main concern for this movie is the fact that this movie is going to be more teen focused and focusing on the teen aspects of the character. Now, the thing is with this, I don't really like the sound of this, and the reason for this is just because, I mean, you know how teen products are, or like kid products are, they're trying to make it more comedic and stuff like that, and more kid focused and stuff like that, which I must admit, for Toes, it is a kid focused product, so I understand the reason why they're going down this route. But I would have to say that for a comic book fan, and a fan that likes more action, darker stuff, a bit more grittier, I would have to say that this movie is taking this whole franchise in the wrong direction. And I would have to say that with the most recent adaptations of the Turtles with Rise, as well as 2012 Turtles, I would have to say that they did a really good job of sort of like capturing the teen aspects of the characters, as well as doing the other stuff for Turtles. And I would have to say that if this movie is focusing more on the teen aspect, I'm not too sure how well that would translate for this movie. Just because I feel as though like with the teen aspect of it, it could potentially ruin it. And if they do want to focus more on the teen stuff, and I do think that could take away from all the other like really fun, great stuff from the Turtle franchise, such as it being more of a, you know, action focused movie. And I would say that comedy is subjective to each person, but I would have to say that when they're trying to, more or less trying to put jokes in constantly, it could potentially take away from the movie and stuff like that. So I do see like a lot of problems with it. But also, like, another thing which I do think is maybe a little bit weird is the fact that these characters are already teenagers and they would have like a teenager cast. So I don't really know why they're focusing more on the teenager aspects of the character, even though they're already teenagers. They can more or less like play off that. I think like I haven't really explained my point all too well, and something which I would like to explain in like another video. But I do think that it's a really interesting thing. But I do think that this is not the way to go with, in terms of like focusing more on the teenager aspect if they're already teenagers, when they could be focusing more on the ninja aspect, and then have like the character traits of them being teenagers shine through. I think that might be the best way to go around it, but I do think that having it more team focused maybe ruin it in a little bit of a way, and it's definitely the main concern which I had going into this movie straight away, just because we know how teenager and kid focused stuff can be. And that's my biggest problem with this movie so far, is the fact that it is so team focused and stuff like that. And yeah. So let me know in the comment section below, do you have these real concerns, or do you not, or are you just looking forward to this movie? I'm really curious to hear what other people have to say about this, because even though you just hear all the great stuff about this movie, in terms of the animation and stuff like that, and then you had the complete other side of things, where people just moan about things because of, like, I mean, a few different reasons why, for April O'Neil and stuff like that. I mean, for better or worse, we'll just complain for the fun of it maybe, but I do think that it's really interesting to hear, like, concerns, like, actual concerns about this movie, in terms of, like, maybe this is a bit more team focused that may not be good, or the voices, or the art style. I'm just really curious to hear what people have to say about this. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today, guys. If you do something, please share, like, subscribe, and all stuff. Goodbye, yo, bye.